In Chapter 12, we went over implicit associations, which are essentially subconscious biases that we as humans make without even realizing it. Implicit biases occur when we hold attitudes towards others and associate stereotypes with them. Humans often harbor negative stereotypes towards individuals without even realizing it. This implicit bias, researchers came up with an idea to create a test called the Implicit Associations Test, or the IAT. The IAT was designed to detect and measure the strength of subconscious associations. IATs were created in a way to attempt to counteract the unreliability of explicit testing. Explicit testing was basically a procedure in which the participants would directly explain specific biases that they had. But many people weren't really that willing to divulge that type of information, so most of their information wasn't exactly accurate. So they created the IAT in an attempt to get some subconscious bias. They wanted to know if the mind was making subconscious decisions regarding specific groups of people or objects or concepts. IATs are usually set up in a questionnaire-like style. They each have their own little twist on it, and they most often ask you a large variety of background questions. And when you get into the actual test, it actually asks you a series of questions that are seemingly unrelated to the topic that it's asking you. It doesn't directly outwardly ask you questions in which you would immediately expose direct bias. It's kind of aiming at subconscious bias, which is the whole goal of the test. In my research, I have learned that IATs can be helpful in providing evidence of correlation in regards to bias, but it does not exactly prove anything. If anything, the tests just say that there's a possibility that this person may be, biased against a particular subject, but it doesn't really prove anything. It doesn't really offer any evidence, and when the test itself has been examined by other psychologists, it only has, a test retake percentage of only 0.5. So therefore, the test isn't really that reliable. Is the test valid? It's only really valid in the sense that it finds a correlation between data points. It doesn't really offer any evidence. It really just says, well, based on this information, this person could possibly be more apt to prefer this particular group of people over this particular group. But it doesn't necessarily mean that that person is racist or prejudiced or biased in any way. It just basically says that this person could possibly be more likely to be in that group. The IAT test that I took, I specifically chose the skin tone test, and basically it suggested for me that I had no personal preference over those with lighter skin tones or darker skin tones. The second IAT test I took revolved around the warmth and general preference for men over women, and it basically said that I had a weak overall general preference for women and that I preferred men over women in regards to automatic general preferences. It did also state that I had a general sense of warmth more so from women than that of men. The third IAT test I took revolved around preference of disabled or abled peoples, and it did say that I was more likely to prefer able-bodied people over disabled people. And I would say that the results of all three of these IATs were actually quite accurate. The skin tone IAT, my results compared to others, I actually was in the moderate zone for skin preference. Actually, a large amount of people prefer one specific skin tone over another, while a much smaller amount of people prefer a darker skin tone over a lighter skin tone. I actually was in the moderate range, and I believe about 18 to 19% of participants fit in that range, while roughly 28% strongly chose a specific color over another. I would say for the IAT that revolved around the general preference of men over women, I would say that actually does represent me as a person in general. Um, Personally, I am actually bisexual, and I do tend to prefer men over women, and I think this subconsciously relates to me in the fact that I did not have a male role model in my life. As a child, I did not have a father present. My grandfather was out on business trips all the time, and I always felt that warmth from the women in my life, like my mother, my grandmother. They were always there for me, to raise me, to take care of me, but I always think I sought that, satisfaction or, the male role model in my life. And I think even today I still seek that. And I think, you know, the results of the test actually reinforce that idea. Because while it says I mostly get the warmth and the love and caringness from the women, I do generally tend to prefer men over women, in a general sense. I would say that this is actually really in line with, my unconscious, um, as well as my conscious decisions as well. Um, like I said, as I didn't really have a male role model in my life as a child, and I went through a lot of detachment as I went through a custody battle, um, and I think that did provide a subconscious pull towards men over women. These factors could have definitely shaped my implicit association, as maybe you know, it affected how I view women, as I view them as more loving and caring, while I'm always seeking that gratification from men because I never really had that in my life as a child. So maybe that subconsciously caused a change. I would definitely say that these results are accurate for me. Now, in terms of validity for IATs in general, there's such a wide array of IATs to choose from, and people are varying in all different kinds, that I don't, it may not be exactly true to say that the tests are exactly reliable, because everyone is so drastically different, and there's a wide application and a wide array of ways the test could go. I think it definitely does prove something in the sense of correlation, like I stated earlier, but I don't believe that there is a direct, causation. Associations are a big deal in society and in psychology. People make judgments and they have bias without even realizing that they have bias. And this can be affected, like for myself, through previous events in their childhood, or even in their developing stages, or even later in life. Implicit associations can, develop over a course of a lifetime, and you may not even realize it. But IATs are just one of the ways that you can possibly gain insight and, maybe connect the dots in regards to correlations between events in your life and these possible biases that you might have.